Why are you doing this to Zimbabweans? I want to complain about why are you doing this to Zimbabwe?
The largest political opposition in the Parliament of Zimbabwe, the Movement for Democratic Change Alliance Party, the MDCA, has been on the receiving end of an onslaught of what appears to be, given events in recent weeks, under attack from the state and its institutions, including the security sector. On Friday, June the 5th, news of the Zimbabwe Republic Police's riot squad stationed outside the MDC Alliance headquarters spread quickly around the country and indeed around the world. The police themselves, driving in an open pickup truck, had little regard of how they carried passengers as exhaust fumes filled the air. They seemed determined to enforce the law one way or the other. Riot police stood at the ready on Nelson Mandela Avenue. The irony that this street on which state police were arresting opposition members is named after Nelson Mandela, notwithstanding. MDC's vice presidents, Lynette and Tendai Biti, tried to reason with police flanked by other party leaders.
Number one, we own the building, and also we own the building, and also this MDC Alliance yacho. So tinekodzero kuti tipinde imomo. Kana pane munhu anoda kuti burisa totsvaga court order, enda kuna court order yakati tibude. So we are asking you to remove the imposters in our building so that we can occupy our building and work.
What has many asking questions, including the diplomatic community at home and abroad, is the evident role of the military, police, and state security in a private property matter. Responding to questions from the local media, Tendai Biti used a clothing analogy to explain his party's rights to the MDC headquarters building.
The ownership of this building is in whose name or organization?
It's the MDC Alliance. We've always occupied this building. The Parliament has got 44 Nelson Mandela Avenue.
This is why
is a building owned by the MDC Alliance.
Opposition members broke into song. Then police stopped them. Then the instruction came. Arrest all these people, the police yelled. The arrests were indiscriminate. Even Mr. Chimini, an opposition member and leader, asked police if they were aware that he was not singing. Police concurred, but instead he was being arrested anyway. Uncertain what they were being arrested for, the 5 MDC leaders were driven away. Recently appointed MDC Alliance National Spokesperson Karenyi-Kore explained the party's position to journalists.
Once Secretary General Wende arrived, he obviously made a police report. The police refused to take his report, and the explanation they gave is that he should go and ask the soldiers for permission and go and liaise with the soldiers. obviously Secretary General Wende said, why should I have to speak to soldiers about this? This is obviously a civilian issue. We have no instructions, no knowledge that the military has been deployed in Zimbabwe. We all know that, Mnangagwa can only deploy the military in terms of the constitution. He certainly cannot deploy the military to fight a political party. It's completely unheard of, it's unlawful, it's unconstitutional. It happened in the dead of night. And this puts paid and completely supports what we've said time and again, that Kupe Monzoro are being used by ZANU-PF to completely try and dismember, the genuine MDC Alliance. And, we completely will resist this. We have not agreed to what's taking place, and we will fight back. We will fight back politically and resist what's taken place. This afternoon, Vice President Kore, Vice President Biti, together with other standing committee members tried to gain access into the building, and they were arrested by the police. We have no court order against us. There's no court order stopping us, and we're completely shocked and flabbergasted that state agents are being used completely outside the law, in a complete affront on our rights, freedoms, and the rule of law, to do violence and try and dismember a legitimate political party. We'll take questions.
How many members have been arrested so far?
So far, we know about
six. There are six.
6 members who've been arrested for no charge. They committed no offense. We're entitled to lawful occupation of our political party building. There's no explanation whatsoever. They committed no crime. And right now we're trying to have a press conference just outside the building, and we're told to go away. We've got the right to freedom of movement in terms of Section 67 of the Constitution. We've got the right to gather freely for a cause as a political party. And you see, the police stopped us from doing so. Journalistic freedom. We don't know why soldiers are camping all around the CBD just because of the MDC Alliance, just to stop us from exercising our political freedoms. We will fight back, and we'll fight back politically.
Spokes, who owns the Harvest House?
Harvest House is held in trust on behalf of the political party MDC Alliance. It's held in trust on our behalf. But what's certain to say, the trustees are known, it's on record, and if anyone wants to know about that, the trust documents are available, but they're trustees. And we all know that trustees are just nominees on behalf of the building, they don't own the building themselves, but they hold it in trust on behalf of an organization. But the critical thing is this, that there's no court order. You don't take the law into your own hands, even if they do believe that they've got a right to the building, which I assert that they don't. You don't take the law into your own hands. If what they're doing is competent, why haven't they used the deputy sheriff?
Exactly.
Why have they come in the middle of the night? Why are they using soldiers? Why are those soldiers armed? That's not how you enforce the law. All of this shows that they're not acting within the confines of the law. If they're acting within the confines of the law, they would not be doing this at night. They would not be using riot police. They would not be using violence. They would not be beating up our legitimate security force, our security personnel, our employees. Why are they using violence? There's no explanation whatsoever. And for people who pretend to be constitutionalists, for people who pretend to be acting in accordance with the rule of law, for people who pretend to be putting the MDC right, this vindicates us. And it's an indictment, on people who've been saying all along that, we're trying to, rectify everything in the MDC. This confirms that they're not. They're out to completely dislodge and cause confusion within the legitimate party. They've been captured by ZANU-PF to just cause confusion and divert everybody's attention from the corruption scandal. We all know that what's making headlines right now is the corruption scandal involving Mnangagwa, his children, his proxies, his bodyguard. They want to draw everyone's attention away from that so that everyone is now talking about the fiasco at Harvest House. We're not going to stop talking about the corruption. We're not going to stop talking about the abduction of those 3 women in our party. We're not going to stop talking about the deteriorating human rights situation. We're going to keep talking about the national crisis. We're not going to stop talking about the fact that 60% of Zimbabweans face starvation. This country is still under lockdown. No support, no safety nets have been put in place for the vulnerable. People are locked down, starving in their homes. We're not going to stop talking about the fact that the price of bread has gone up. We're not going to stop talking about the fact that the price of fuel has gone up. That's where everybody's focus should be right now. We're not going to stop talking about the fact that the rate of inflation is now 765%.
So what is
There's complete failure.
What is the party's way forward now?
The party's way forward is that we're going to fight this politically. Obviously, tactics and strategies aren't discussed with the media. That's not how it goes, especially when you've got a regime that's as callous as this one that will drive army tanks in broad daylight in the street. You've got a regime who put, riot police at the entrance of a building. We're not going to discuss our tactics and strategies, but we will fight back politically. A regime who will arrest political party officials for trying to gain entrance into their own offices. Completely unlawful.
Meanwhile, a high-ranking diplomat in the United States government, the Assistant Secretary in the Bureau for African Affairs, Tibor Naj, tweeted their view on the events taking place in Harare. He said, "The United States condemns the Zimbabwean government's politicized use of security forces to take over an opposition party's headquarters and arrest its members," adding, "This is the latest example of the government of Zimbabwe's departure from democratic norms and is inconsistent with previous commitments to implement fundamental political and economic reforms." While the top European diplomat in Zimbabwe said, "This week's events in Zimbabwe show a lack of respect for rule of law, due process and constitutional rights," listing them out as partisan deployment of security forces, arrests, disrespect for property rights, partial investigations, corruption and threats against journalists. He added, "Security forces involved in private property dispute, oppositions harassed, political party threatens journalists, and questioned the investigative bias and impunity of human rights violations," ending with, "Not a good week for Zimbabwe." Despite this onslaught of attacks from its biggest rival, the MDC Alliance's North America province, on March 31st, kicked off its 2023 fundraiser with a whopping $11,000. They say they vowed and are focused on fundraising for the 2023 elections despite all the attacks.